The silence hit like a wall. Deputy Marshal Torres turned the key in the ignition, and the big diesel engine rumbled to life. Then he turned it off. The silence returned. Not the quiet you expect in the desert, something heavier, something wrong. He stood beside the truck and listened. No wind, no birds, no hum from the power lines overhead, just emptiness pressing against his ears. The Kenworth had been parked on the shoulder of Interstate 10, near mile marker 64 in western Arizona. A highway patrol officer had spotted it during a routine sweep. The truck had been there for days, maybe longer. Dust coated every surface. The tires were flat. The paint had faded under the relentless sun. But the trailer was still attached, and inside that trailer was a full load of frozen goods, 6 years old. Torres climbed into the cab. The interior smelled like baked plastic and old coffee. The driver's seat was pushed back. A jacket hung from a hook behind the seat. The logbook sat on the dashboard. He opened it. The last entry was dated May 3, 2019. The name at the top was James Rucker. Torres radioed dispatch and ran the name. James Rucker had been reported missing in May 2019. His truck and trailer had vanished without a trace. Now both had reappeared in the middle of nowhere. The load manifest was tucked into a plastic sleeve on the passenger seat. Torres pulled it out and read. The cargo was pharmaceutical supplies, vaccines and insulin, all temperature controlled. The delivery destination was a distribution center in Phoenix. The shipment had been scheduled to arrive on May 4, 2019. It never did. The company that owned the freight had filed an insurance claim. The case had gone cold. Torres contacted the freight company. A manager confirmed the details. James Rucker had been hauling the load from a facility in El Paso. He had checked in with dispatch on May 3 at 11:19 a.m. He said he was making good time. He expected to arrive in Phoenix by late afternoon. That was his last communication. When he did not arrive, dispatch tried calling. No answer. They pinged his truck's GPS unit. The signal had gone dead. Search teams had checked the route. No sign of him or the truck. Torres examined the GPS unit mounted on the dashboard. The screen was dark. He pressed the power button. Nothing. He checked the wiring. The unit had been disconnected, not torn out. Cleanly unplugged. Someone had done it on purpose. He photographed the wiring and called a forensic team. The team arrived within 2 hours. They dusted the cab for fingerprints. Most of them matched James Rucker's CDL records. But there were several prints on the steering wheel that did not match. The prints were smudged, partial, not enough for a database comparison. The team also found a receipt wedged between the seats. It was from a truck stop in Deming, New Mexico, dated May 3, 2019. The receipt showed a fuel purchase at 7:42 a.m. that placed James about 250 miles east of where the truck was found. Torres checked the fuel gauge. Empty. He did the math. The truck should have had enough fuel to reach Phoenix. But if James had driven east instead of west, the fuel would have run out somewhere along the way. Torres wondered why James would drive in the wrong direction. He contacted the truck stop in Deming. The manager pulled the security footage from May 2019. The video showed James fueling his truck. He looked calm. He paid inside and left. Nothing unusual. But the manager noticed something else. Another truck had pulled into the lot right after James left. A blue Peterbilt. The driver had watched James drive away. Then the Peterbilt had followed him onto the highway. The manager did not think much of it at the time. Truckers often traveled in pairs for safety. But now it seemed suspicious. Torres requested the Peterbilt's license plate from the footage. The plate was too blurry to read. He asked the manager to check fuel receipts from that day. The manager found one. A Peterbilt had fueled up at 7:58 a.m. The receipt was paid with a fleet card. The card belonged to a regional carrier based in Texas. Torres contacted the carrier. They confirmed that one of their drivers had been in Deming that morning. His name was Victor Lane. Torres tracked Victor down. He was still driving for the same carrier. Torres called him. Victor said he remembered being in Deming that day. He had been hauling furniture to California. He did not remember seeing James Rucker. Torres asked if Victor had followed another truck onto the highway. Victor hesitated. Then he admitted he had. He said the other driver seemed lost. Victor had tried to help. He followed the truck for about 50 miles. Then the truck turned off at a rest area. Victor kept going. He did not see the truck again. Torres asked which rest area. Victor said it was near mile marker 120 on Interstate 10. Torres checked the map. That was west of Deming, not east, but the truck had been found near mile marker 64. That was 100 miles farther east. Torres asked Victor if he was sure about the direction. Victor said he was. Torres thanked him and hung up. Something did not add up. The forensic team opened the trailer. The refrigeration unit was off. The interior was warm. The smell hit immediately, rotten and sour. The team put on masks and climbed inside. The cargo was still there. Boxes of vaccines and insulin, all of it spoiled. The temperature logs showed the unit had shut off on May 3rd at 2:14 p.m. That was about 3 hours after James had fueled up in Deming. Torres wondered why the refrigeration unit had failed. The team examined the unit. The compressor was intact. The wiring was fine, but the fuel line to the unit had been cut, not worn through, cut with a blade. Someone had sabotaged the unit. Torres photographed the cut and sent the images to the freight company. The manager was shocked. He said the unit had been inspected before the trip. It had been working perfectly. Torres reviewed the timeline. James had left Deming around 7:45 a.m. Victor had followed him west for 50 miles. The truck had turned off at mile marker 120 around 8:30 a.m. The refrigeration unit had shut off at 2:14 p.m. That was almost 6 hours later. What had James been doing during that time? And why had the unit been sabotaged? The forensic team searched the rest area near mile marker 120. They found nothing. No witnesses, no security footage. The rest area had been closed for renovations in 2020. Whatever evidence had been there was gone. Torres contacted other drivers who had been on the route that day. One driver remembered seeing a Kenworth with a refrigerated trailer parked at a weigh station near mile marker 98. The driver said the truck had been there for hours. He assumed the driver was taking a break. Torres checked the weigh station. It was still operational. The manager pulled the records from May 3, 2019. The Kenworth had entered the weigh station at 9:07 a.m. The truck had passed inspection. No violations. But the driver had not left until 1:52 p.m. That was almost 5 hours. Torres asked the manager why a driver would stay that long. The manager said some drivers used the weigh station as a safe place to sleep, but 5 hours in the middle of the day was unusual. The forensic team reviewed the weigh station's security footage. The video showed James sitting in his cab. He did not get out. He did not make phone calls. He just sat there. Occasionally he looked in the side mirrors, as if he was watching for something or someone. At 1:52 p.m., he started the engine and left. The video showed him heading west on Interstate 10 toward Phoenix. But somewhere between mile marker 98 and mile marker 64 he had turned around and driven east. The truck had run out of fuel near mile marker 64 and stopped. Torres wondered what had made James turn around. He contacted the Arizona Department of Transportation. They checked for incidents on the highway that afternoon. There had been a minor accident near mile marker 78 at 2:03 p.m. Traffic had been slowed for about 20 minutes, but James would have passed that area before the accident happened. There was no reason for him to turn around. The forensic team examined James's cell phone records. His phone had been active until 2:11 p.m. on May 3rd. The last call he made was to a number registered to a prepaid phone. The call lasted 47 seconds. Then his phone went offline. Torres tried to trace the prepaid phone. It had been purchased at a convenience store in Tucson. No name attached. The phone had been used only 3 times. Once to call James, twice to call a motel in Yuma. Torres contacted the motel. The clerk searched the records. On May 3, 2019, a man had checked into room 9. He had paid cash. The name on the register was fake. The clerk did not remember much about him, but the clerk said the man had asked if any trucks had broken down nearby. The clerk had said no. The man had stayed one night and left early the next morning. Torres showed the clerk a photo of James Rucker. The clerk said it was not him. Torres asked for a description of the man. The clerk said he was tall, maybe 6 feet, wore a gray hoodie and sunglasses. He had a backpack. Nothing unusual. Torres asked if the motel had security cameras. The clerk said they did, but the footage from 2019 had been erased. The system only kept recordings for 90 days. Torres returned to the truck. He searched the cab again. This time, he found something under the passenger seat. A small black device. It was a signal jammer, the kind used to block GPS and cell phone signals. Torres bagged it as evidence. He sent it to a lab for analysis. The lab confirmed it was functional. The device had been turned on at 2:08 p.m. on May 3, 2019. That matched the time James's phone went offline. Torres concluded that someone had planted the jammer in the truck, probably at the weigh station. James had been sitting in the cab for hours. He had not left. That meant someone had accessed the truck while he was inside, or someone had planted the device earlier, before James left El Paso. Torres contacted the facility in El Paso, where James had picked up the load. The security manager reviewed the loading records. James had arrived at 4:22 a.m. on May 3rd. The load had been secured by 6:15 a.m. James had inspected the trailer and signed off. He had left by 6:30 a.m. The security manager said the facility had tight protocols. Only authorized personnel were allowed near the trucks. But the manager admitted that the cameras near the loading dock had been down that morning. A power surge had knocked them out. They had been fixed by noon. Torres asked for a list of employees who had been at the facility that morning. The manager provided it. Torres cross-referenced the names with criminal databases. One name stood out: Kyle Brennan. He had worked as a dock loader. He had been fired in June 2019 for stealing. Torres contacted him. Kyle denied any involvement. He said he had been working at the dock that morning, but he had not touched James's truck. He had been assigned to a different trailer. Torres pressed harder. He asked if Kyle had seen anyone near James's truck. Kyle hesitated. Then he said he had. A contractor. Someone from the refrigeration company. The contractor had been servicing the units. Kyle said the contractor had spent a long time near James's trailer, maybe 30 minutes. Torres asked for a name. Kyle did not know, but he said the contractor drove a white van. The van had a logo, a snowflake. Torres contacted refrigeration companies in the El Paso area. Only 2 companies used a snowflake logo. One of them confirmed they had sent a technician to the facility on May 3rd. The technician's name was Eric Sandoval. Torres looked him up. Eric had no criminal record, but he had filed for bankruptcy in 2018. His house had been foreclosed. He was in debt. Torres called Eric. No answer. He tried several times. Finally, Eric called back. Torres asked if he remembered working at the facility on May 3rd, 2019. Eric said he did. He said he had been servicing refrigeration units, standard maintenance. Torres asked if he had worked on James Rucker's unit. Eric said yes. He had checked the compressor and topped off the coolant. Everything had been fine when he left. Torres asked if Eric had seen anyone else near the truck. Eric said no. Torres asked if Eric had installed any devices in the truck. Eric denied it. Torres asked if Eric had cut the fuel line to the refrigeration unit. Eric went quiet. Then he hung up. Torres called back. Eric did not answer. Torres obtained a warrant and searched Eric's home. In the garage he found a toolbox. Inside was a utility knife. The blade was clean, but forensic tests showed traces of rubber and fuel, the same materials found in the cut fuel line. Torres also found a prepaid phone in a drawer. The phone matched the number that had called James on May 3rd. Torres arrested Eric. At the station, Eric refused to talk. His lawyer advised him to stay silent, but Torres had enough evidence. The phone, the knife, the connection to the truck. He charged Eric with sabotage and kidnapping. The case went to trial. During the trial, Eric's lawyer argued that Eric had only cut the fuel line. He had not kidnapped James. He did not know what happened to him. The jury did not believe him. Eric was convicted. He was sentenced to 15 years. But James Rucker was never found. Torres interviewed Eric in prison. He asked what Eric had done with James. Eric said he had not touched him. He said he had only sabotaged the refrigeration unit. He had been hired to do it. Someone had paid him $5,000. Torres asked who. Eric said he did not know. The person had contacted him through an encrypted app. They had met once, in a parking lot at night. The person had given him cash. Eric never saw their face. Torres asked why someone would pay to sabotage a refrigeration unit. Eric said he had no idea. He had just needed the money. He had not asked questions. Torres asked if the person had mentioned James. Eric said no. The person had only said to disable the unit after the truck left El Paso. Eric had done it. He had planted the jammer to make sure James could not call for help. Then he had left. He assumed the truck would break down somewhere, and the cargo would spoil. He thought it was just insurance fraud. He did not know it would lead to a disappearance. Torres reviewed the case again. Someone had paid Eric to sabotage the truck. But why? The cargo was valuable, but not valuable enough to justify kidnapping. Torres checked the insurance records. The freight company had received a payout of $2 million for the lost shipment, but the payout had gone to the company, not to an individual. Torres contacted the company's financial records. He found that the company had been struggling in early 2019. They were on the verge of bankruptcy. The insurance payout had saved them. Torres interviewed the company's CEO. The CEO denied any involvement. He said the company had been devastated by the loss. Torres asked if the CEO had hired Eric. The CEO said no. Torres did not believe him, but he had no proof. The case stalled again. 2 years later, Torres got a tip. A truck driver called. He said he had seen James Rucker, not in 2019, in 2023, at a truck stop in Nevada. The driver said James looked different, thinner, older, but he was sure it was him. Torres flew to Nevada. He checked the truck stop's security footage. The video showed a man who resembled James, but the man had a beard and he was driving a different truck. Torres showed the footage to James's family. They said it could be him, but they were not certain. Torres tracked the truck to a small company in Idaho. The owner said the driver's name was Mark Collins, but when Torres checked the CDL, the photo did not match the video. Torres requested a meeting with Mark Collins. The man agreed. When Torres saw him in person, he knew it was James Rucker. James did not deny it. He said he had changed his name. He said he had been running from something. Torres asked what. James said he did not know. He said someone had wanted him dead. On May 3, 2019, he had received a call. The voice had been distorted. The person had told him to drive to a specific location. If he did not, his family would be hurt. James had panicked. He had driven to the way station and waited. Hours passed. Nothing happened. Then he realized the refrigeration unit was failing. He knew the cargo would be ruined. He knew he would be blamed. He decided to run. He had turned the truck around and driven east until the fuel ran out. Then he had abandoned the truck. He had walked to the highway and hitchhiked to California. He had changed his identity. He had been hiding ever since. Torres asked why he had not gone to the police. James said he did not trust anyone. He said whoever had called him had known too much. They had known his route, his schedule, his family. He thought it was someone inside the company. Torres asked if James had any proof. James said no. Just the phone call and the fear. Torres said the case was still open. James could come forward. James refused. He said he had built a new life. He did not want to go back. Torres said he could not force him, but he could not keep the secret either. James asked for 1 week. Torres agreed. A week later, Torres received a package. Inside was a flash drive. The drive contained encrypted messages between the freight company's CEO and an unknown contact. The messages discussed sabotaging the truck. They mentioned James by name. They outlined the plan. The CEO had hired Eric to disable the refrigeration unit. The goal was to spoil the cargo and collect the insurance money. But the CEO had also planned to make James disappear, to eliminate any witnesses. The unknown contact had been hired to kill James, but James had run before the contact could find him. Torres arrested the CEO. The CEO confessed. He said the company had been drowning in debt. The insurance payout was the only way to survive. He had not meant for James to be harmed. He had only wanted the cargo to spoil. But the contact had insisted on eliminating James. The CEO had agreed. He said he regretted it. But the damage was done. James Rucker returned home. His family welcomed him. But the years apart had changed everything. His children had grown up without him. His wife had moved on. James tried to rebuild his life. But the silence from those 6 years haunted him. The silence of the desert. The silence of the truck cab. The silence of the choice he had made to disappear rather than fight. Some mysteries end with answers, but the answers do not always bring peace.